Welcome to the feature series, How Roger Penske Changed the Indy 500 on the Marshall Pruitt podcast, which celebrates the most successful entrant at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the 50th anniversary of his first event in 1969. Presented by Cooper Tires, the Justice Brothers, and Bell Racing Helmets, a long-standing partner of Team Penske. This 15-part series spans some of the greatest drivers, managers, mechanics, engineers, and the man himself, Roger Penske, to document the captain's vast influence on America's defining motor race, the Indy 500, and in many instances, the sport as a whole. We'll also be joined by a reporter who covered Penske's Indy debut a half-century ago and some of his fiercest rivals, many of whom admit to being fans of the 82-year-old icon. Our guest on this episode of How Roger Penske Changed the Indy 500 is the Rocket, Rick Mears, the only man to win all four of his Indy 500s while driving for Roger Penske in a career that spanned 1978 through 1992 in the cockpit and continues to this day as a driver coach and consultant for Penske's NTT IndyCar Series team. The place I'd love to start, Rick, if we could, is on the subject of how Roger Penske, since he arrived in 1969, has changed the Indy 500, how he has influenced it, whether it's ways of doing things, standards of preparation, driver quality, you name it. So just curious, maybe as an opening question, as someone who's been a part of the organization for a significant, if not all, but almost all 40 of those 50 years, what are some of the things that come to mind, Rick, about how RP has shaped or influenced the 500 since he appeared?
Well, I can keep it very simple, all the above. Everything. I think he's been an influence on all of it, really. I think his whole, and this is what influenced the sport, and I don't think he was doing it to influence the sport. I take that back. I think there were times that he was when the sport needed it. You know, like if it needed a direction or needed some, some long-term planning or whatever. I think, he's so good at it. He's always, I'd come up with something from time to time and think I'm thinking down the road, and he said, well, yeah, that sounds good. But, then you got to take a look at this, and this, another 4 or 5 years beyond that. I think, Jesus, I thought I was down the road, he's clear on down the road. Always looking ahead, but obviously starting out, just raising the bar. Like all the stories about, they were joking about him showing up with his crew cut team and all in matching shirts and wheels polished on the car and that kind of thing, and everybody looked at him like, who's this guy? But it was a standard that he set, and I think he was probably doing it for different reasons at different times. Let's face it, it's this business is about generating sponsorship and getting the dollars together to get the equipment needed and to improve your team and improve the quality of your equipment and that kind of thing. It's just a good example. It's something I learned right off the bat with him. And before I ever started driving for him, before I ever had a clue that I would even drive for him, when I was at Indy in my first year with that Pink Eagle.
Oh yeah,
and we were losing some motors and Sue guy we'd run a few races before that, and the equipment was getting some miles on it, and and he didn't have the funding, and we're needing some parts and pieces, and I'm thinking this is back before drivers brought sponsorship, and I remember thinking, God, if I could just help him somehow, and I was in construction with my dad, and I'd met a few people like from Caterpillar and a couple of, thought, boy, if I could maybe bring somebody in and, help with a couple dollars. And I was walking in the garage one night, going to my garage, and this was the lesson learned. And I'm walking along there, and I go by Roger's garage to get to mine. And I look in the door as I go by, and it's like a slap in the face. I thought, no, wait a minute. And not that our garage is bad, right? I mean, it was clean, the guys, did a good job. But I thought, if I had a sponsor on my arm right now, walking them, trying to sell them, and I had to go by his garage to get to mine, where are they going to want to go?
That's a brilliant observation, though, and it's such a Roger thing where
presentation.
We're not talking about the racetrack, the mile per hour you turned or the team turned that day. Just the visual impression was such a distinguishing factor that you could lose a sponsor even if they didn't know what speeds you were turning.
Presentation. And when I looked in his garage, and like I said, I went on down to my garage, and ours was clean, and the guys did a good job, but there was more effort put into his elbow grease, the more thought and planning, colors matching on all the toolboxes, on the tools, everything had a place on the wall. The floor was clean. He'd laid down some of his own tile, just to dress it up and clean it up and make it nice to work off of. And everything had a place, It was organization, elbow grease. And that's not dollars. That's not money. And I used to get so tired of hearing people say, oh, if we had his money, we could do that too. A lot of what he does isn't the money. Yes, money helps. But I know for a fact over the years there were teams that were getting higher sponsor dollars than he was. He's always been pretty fair. And it's planning, it's presentation, it's elbow grease, it's thought. And his saying, effort equals results. It's across the board. That's it. But that lesson learned, it's just like a wake up call, and I thought, whoa. And it was so easy to spot. Well, that was part of him changing the sport. He was doing it probably not to raise the sport. He was doing it to generate the funds he needed to do the team the way he wanted to do it.
Mm.
Well, and in a sense, then everybody was like me. They walked by their garage and thought, uh-oh, I don't want to show my sponsor my garage after they see this one. So they go down and go to work on theirs. And, it's just like when he's, early on, I'd get to the racetrack after I started driving for him, and he'd be already in the garage, kind of waiting for everybody. And he might have a broom in his hand, sweeping the floor, and he's moving stuff around and organizing things and thinking about it. And, and then, getting the guys to, I think it'd look better if we did this, or if we did that, if we need to move this over here and switch this over to there. So hands-on, that is the presentation was one thing, but it goes through the team, through the people. He wouldn't ask anybody to do anything he wouldn't do himself, basically. That effort and that work ethic, and it filters right through the team, and he raises the bar of the team itself. I think that's where I was going with it. His own people, not just other teams. He's constantly raising, the bar on his own team. That's how it's just like driving the car. Driving's the same thing. Every time I go through a corner, I've never been through a corner perfect in my life. And I always swore if I ever did, I'd quit. Because every time you go through a corner, you're thinking, how can I improve it the next time through? How can I adjust my pattern? How can I, the tires are going this way, the fuel's going that way, so I need to go this way on the track to make up the difference, to keep the average up as it's trying to fall off. That's how I go faster, by losing less than everybody else through the stint. And, every corner, every track, how do I improve the corner? How do I improve the lap? How do I improve the race over the last one? That is this business, and that is what he does in everything. How do we improve the team? How do we improve the cars? How do we improve the organization of how we operate? I just read somewhere in something not long ago, I'm talking about at one point throughout history when backup cars became the norm rather than than whatever, And I remember when we first started really focusing on having our backup cars ready and T cars and everything, I remember early on, if you had trouble with a car and you had to go jump in the backup car real quick, they weren't always the same as much as you thought they were.
Sure.
They never were. And so I remember at one point the team just really making a focused effort on why are these cars not the same? We're building them all out of the same pieces, all with the same measurements, and we really, really focused on the guys that are keeping the T car up with the race car. They did an exercise in shop. They got everybody said, okay, look, putting it simple, I want everybody to use the same wrench on the same part. I want everybody, turn the same way. When you're measuring something, I want everybody to measure from the same side of the line instead of, one guy measures on the middle line, one guy measures off the left side of the line, one guy measures off the right side of the line. Well, you add all those little things up, and that's why they're different. So they really did a big effort on getting all the guys to work together and watch each other and see how each one would measure things, and then everybody find which is the best way, and then everybody agreed to do it all that same way, no matter what it is that they're doing. And pretty soon you got to where you could pull that backup car out of that, off the trailer, get it ready to jump in the car and go out there and feel like it's the same car you just got out of. But it's that kind of effort to improve. And, I really think majority of it is him trying to improve the team, which in turn was raising the sport and improving the other teams along with, because you had to compete. If you want to compete with them, you gotta step up and that's the way you do. I listen to drivers, in conversation, whether it was my teammates or even, competitors. My dad, I remember one of the first things he told me when I first started racing, he said, you listen to everybody. You never know don't tune somebody out and think they're an idiot. You never know who's going to say something that'll help you. And so I've always done that. And, you listen to, and so that's what you do with the teams too. You watch other teams, you see how they do things all the time. And you get, see oh, that's a good idea. And then in turn, that could spark taking it a step further, it's just a constant, this game is a constant improving. How do I improve? But, just his presence, like I said, the effort equals results says it all. And I think, like I say, I think a lot of times throughout the years, I think he has changed the sport a lot over the years. I think he's had a huge, to me, I would, I'm a little partial, but I would say he's probably had as big an influence on this industry as anybody, period.
Since 1954, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has served as the proving grounds for the world's most legendary helmet brand. From Jimmy Bryan to Mario Andretti and Helio Castroneves, Bell Helmets has and continues to protect some of the all-time greats. Follow the journey on social media at Bell Racing HQ or by visiting bellracing.com. I'd love to get your thoughts on, Rick, knowing that you've been part of RP's story at Indianapolis for 41 years or so. Obviously, more of those outside the cockpit than in, but you've added 4 of those rings, 4 of those baby Borgs to the 17 that he's earned. Obviously been an ongoing massive influence in all the drivers who followed behind you. But the thing I'd love to hear about, maybe going back to the early days, is the culture and reputation of Penske from the outset was one of all the things you mentioned. Everything's buttoned up, polished, presentation, all of that distilling down to performance on track. Then I think about this kid from Bakersfield who's built this career off-road, dirt racing and dust and all these kinds of things. And again, it's a little bit of an abstract, but just thinking of your background, to some, it might not seem like a perfect marriage. You out, again, waist high and dirt and muck and who knows what and vegetation, and coming to this team where every hair is perfect, everything is all about the polish. And yet, I think folks might not fully grasp that your background, your off-road background, so similar procedurally about preparation and planning and so on. Maybe it shouldn't be a surprise that despite polar opposite backgrounds coming together, this has actually been one heck of a union. Did you feel that your background, despite it being so outside the world of Indy cars and such, was a good fit right away when you came in 78?
I wasn't sure how much it was going to be until with some time, and I started realizing everything's relative. And every time I stepped into something else, I realized, hey, it's just another car, or it's just another motorcycle. It might have a little different language. You listen to that language, you listen to what it's telling you that it wants, and that's what you do. So it's really fairly simple. I always tried to keep things simple. And, but when I think back, as far as even getting to IndyCar, I had no plans of doing that. We were just doing what we did for fun on the weekends as family recreation. But I can look back and see things that happened that helped make it happen. But I wasn't doing it for those reasons. I was just having fun. And so in doing that, I jumped in anything that came by. And I could be leading in a points championship and whatever I'm running at the time, and somebody'd say, hey, what do you think about trying one of these? And I might miss a race to go do it. Just because I loved getting in anything I could. And, that might not sound too smart to do, but at the time I was having fun. Well, at the time that was helping me in different ways to get to where I did. First of all, it was teaching me to adapt quickly to different things. And you learn something from everything you get in, that you'll learn something that equates to something down the road. But it just made me more well-rounded to be able to jump into something and make a decent showing fairly quickly, because I got used to adapting to things as quickly as I could and experiencing a lot of different types of things. So that was helping me, and I didn't know it. I wasn't doing it for that reason. But then the other part of it that was helping me is it was getting my name in front of different people and different groups. And so it kept the name popping up over here, and then pretty soon it'd pop up over there, and then pretty soon it popped up somewhere else. And, as you go up in the sport, the audience gets smaller as you go up, the group, as you go up the ladder, so to speak. And so the name kept popping up, and eventually there was people up higher up that were hearing the name more often. So that recognition was helping. I didn't know any of this until after the fact. When I look back on it, hindsight's always 20/20. And I could see the things that helped make it all happen, even though I had no idea I was going to be in an IndyCar until 6 months before it actually happened. And it was way out of my league. I just, no way. Just like once I got to IndyCar, Penske was way out of my league, But I think, with Penske and the marriage and, the working of it, there are a couple things there that helped. My background, and like I'm talking about the Super V, my jumping around, we were starting, obviously the cars were rear engine at that point. Not too far out of the Roadster era. There was still a Roadster in 77 trying to make the show when I first went back. So I wasn't too far behind the Roadster, and we were getting into more road races starting to crop up. So, my rear engine experience, if I'm a car owner and I'm looking at somebody and says, okay, this guy's spent the last 2 or 3 years in a midget or a sprint car. this guy, the last 2 or 3 years, he's been in a front engine car, a rear engine car, a side engine car, 2 wheels, 4 wheels. You know, he's got a pretty broad spectrum of experience. But then you have to look at the record and see if they've won or not. So it's just a combination of a lot of little things like that. And when I also, good old mom and dad, you know, I was born with the ability, you know, to be able to do that. And then growing up in a household that, you know, that enjoyed doing that kind of thing and allowed me the opportunity to get out at an early age and learn it and play with it. And, but there was some natural ability there too, that when I got on a speedway, the faster the corner and the faster the track, the more natural it came to me. Why, I don't know. It just, I try to be smooth, and I've learned later on that, you know, that smooth is fast. The smoother you are, the more you can trim it out and get away with it. The more radical you are, the more you have to keep the thing pinned down, tied down, and so you can make the, you know, more drastic moves and not get away from you. So that was a plus when we got on the speedway and got the Indy. My first Indy car was on Ontario, which was like Indy. So my very first experience in an Indy car was on a speedway. So, you know, it wasn't like I got on a 1 mile track first or a road course first, and then I had to learn at Indy. That's kind of where I started. And we had a week's practice to get comfortable in the car before the race, because it was a 500 miler. So everything was a plus. But I think the other big thing that helped me with Team Penske with Roger was he's always operated as a team, the team concept. As much as people tried to argue with him, oh, you've got a 1, 2, and a 3, and this, that, and the other, and didn't believe it was a full team effort. It always has been. And I fell right in that respect, unknowingly. Because, you know, I had been practicing the team concept unknowingly before I ever got there. My brother and I, that was the team concept. You know, we raced against each other all the time growing up, and we'd go back home at night and say, okay, what are you doing over there? What'd you do in this corner? What'd you do to the car when you did that? You know, and we'd pick each other's brain, even though if we were competing against each other, because we felt like if we could help raise each other to another level to get an advantage on the other guys, and all we had to do was race each other, what more could we ask for? That'd be a lot of fun. You know, and then it comes down to big brother doesn't want little brother to beat him, and little brother wants to beat big brother. You know, the competition's always there. But we would rather work together and help each other to do better overall. That's the team concept in a nutshell. And so when I stepped into Penske's, I just fit right into that team concept. I had no trouble working with the other drivers. Back then, it was, you know, not as widely accepted like it is now. And, you know, and I had some teammates that, you know, really most all the teammates I had were pretty good in that respect, other than Bobby Unser.
Yeah, I spoke with Uncle Bobby yesterday, and he had some colorful words, not mean towards you, but just right. He's known for, he could be among 10 teammates in a team as far as Bobby sees the world. He is the one entry, and then there are some other weird people hanging around. Yeah.
Well, he'd say it right out loud. He said, I wasn't put on this earth to make Rick Mears go fast. You know? And, you know, and I learned, you know, he tells everybody he taught me everything I know. And we've had functions together where he'd get up and say that, you know, and I'd get up, because he and I get along great.
Sure.
We always have. And I get up right after him and say, well, yeah, you know what? Bobby did teach me a lot. He taught me even more than he knows he taught me. He taught me how to sort between the BS, read between the lines, and all kinds of things that he taught me that he doesn't even realize that he taught me. So I did learn a lot from him. because I had my own ego too, just like anybody else, any other driver. And I wanted to do it on my own, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to keep my eyes and ears open and listen. I wouldn't go up to a teammate and, unless we were having a problem with something. And certain teammates, we just did work that way together. Whatever you needed, hey, what's this? What'd you do here? What'd you do there? I didn't ask as much because I always had my pride. I wanted to do it myself. And that's the way with Bobby. I wanted to beat him on my own. He didn't want me to learn anything from him. He hid everything from me. And that just drove me even more to not want to ask him anything. But I would keep my eyes and ears open and watch and listen. And you learn how to read each other, and I did a spring change at Road America or someplace. I think it was Road America. Just a 50-pound. I just need a little more bite off the corner, and I said, I want to go a little lighter rear spring, and we were already pretty light. So they said, the next step we've got is only 50 pounds. I said, let's try it. I put it on, went out and ran the car, and it helped me off the corner. A little more power down, and so I came in, and Bobby always, as soon as I'd come in, he was one of the first ones on the side of the car listening to me. And although he didn't like me sitting on his car listening, I don't think. But so I came in and I said, what about spring? I said, yeah, it's good. Leave it. We'll keep it. And boy, he's just flipped out. Oh, there ain't a man alive that can feel a 50-pound spring change. There's no way. Nobody can feel a 50-pound spring change. No. As soon as he started doing that, I thought, I got him. That's just exactly. I must be going his direction, or he wouldn't be raising hell.
I love it.
So that's the way we we got along great. And obviously we didn't work as closely together as a lot of the other teammates. But I had respect for Bobby, and if he would help me. I'm not saying he would never, but I loved the way he looked at it, and that's one of the things he taught me. If he didn't have a 5% advantage over everybody, as far as he was concerned, he was 10% behind, and that's just the way he worked at it. I mean, nobody worked any harder at setup on a car than he did. And I did learn a lot from him, but it wasn't necessarily. He helped me more before he came on the team. He was one of the ones that helped me with the Teddy Yip deal. And in those early days like that, he ran an off-road race with us out in the desert once, because I'd met him at Pikes Peak. This was going back when I was jumping around all the time doing different stuff. I was meeting people that would help down the road, and I had no idea.
Sure.
I'd met he and Alan at Pikes Peak and got to know him there. And so when I started getting the opportunity to get into IndyCar, he was helping. He'd take me to it. We went to a track that I'd never been around. Hey, come on, jump in a rental car. And we'd get in a rental car and go out, and we'd run some laps, and he'd kind of point out what to do, what not to do. And, he helped me twice as much before he became my teammate, because I wasn't a threat to him then. But then as soon as I became a threat to him, the help ceased, other than the basics.
One of the things, Rick, that I think would be interesting to learn about, and I might know the answer to this, but there are some team owners who've had amazing people work for them. And this isn't limited to IndyCar or the Indy 500. But there are definitely, I think, some team owners that might come to mind where they are the central point, they are the celebrity, the focus. Any successes had, folks point to the team owner. And in those instances, you have a team owner who welcomes it, absorbs it, takes everything that can possibly come in their way. Then there are some others where I would look at a Roger Penske and say, of course we credit Roger for being the architect, for being the standard bearer, unwavering standard bearer now for 50 years. But then you also think about the Penske organization and all of the names and how many legendary figures that have been a part of this journey at Indianapolis in particular. And whether it's the Karl Keinhofer to a Rick Reineman to a, run on down the list, Clive Howell, we can name so many people, mechanics, engineers, managers, truck drivers, who they have all, I don't know if I would say been pushed to the front, but they have been allowed to shine and receive all the accolades they are due, because at least as I believe, and again, I'd love your thoughts on this, I've never seen Roger as the one who sees the cameras and goes rushing over to get his face on TV and grab the glory. He seems to be someone that loves to watch talented people within his organization rise and receive their due reward.
Absolutely. Yeah, he almost goes the other way at times. And, that's very true. And then another point to that allows that to happen is Roger's longevity and being a long-term thinker. People stay there long enough to build on that kind of thing. And, he's always been about long-term, and he always talks about it, the what's he call it? The human capital. And, he's always at functions saying how many they've got the total of hours or years, that are, not hours, but years that the team members, all the team people have together, and how many years of experience there is there. And it's due to longevity and low turnover. And Roger's always been a stickler at that. And he doesn't like to lose good people. And I mean, I've watched him. The guy is just good across the board at everything. I mean, again, I'm a little partial, but I've just seen there's so many things that he's done that people have no idea, to help out in different areas in different ways throughout the years. But I've seen him with people on the team. You get a lot of these guys come in young and start working, and he likes to keep the youth group in there going and bringing them along, and so eventually down the road at times they start getting a little, not burnt out, but just need a change. Say they've grown up and gotten older and have gotten married and maybe started a family and decide they don't want to be on the road quite so much. And decide they want to look at doing something else. And like I said, Roger, he knows good people are good people. And if somebody's good at what they do, they'll be good at whatever they decide to do, not just that one thing. And he knows that. And so, instead of letting them go elsewhere, that's one of the fortunate things with Roger, with all of his other companies. It's such a plus for us. He'd say, okay, well, what do you got in mind? What are you looking at doing? You say, you want to get into truck leasing? You want to get into automobile, dealership and service or sales, or, what do you want to do? And he'd lay out any opportunities that he might have. And if they choose one, then he'd put them through school. I watched him put them through school and get the training needed to go into whatever other portion of the company that they want to do, because he knows they're going to be good at it. He builds that and instills that in people, that you earn that trust, and you always work harder at something you enjoy doing, and work harder for somebody you enjoy working for. He's just so good at that, and he does. And back to the original thing, he'll step back now, and it's the Penske team. It's Team Penske, and I know, and probably some of the earlier drivers that's probably one of the reasons they weren't so much into the team concept.
Mm.
You know, it was they were used to the spotlight being more on the driver, not on the team. Now, you know, Roger doesn't look for the light, but his name comes up because it's the name of the team. So, you know, it's Team Penske. It's not Rick Mears' team. It's not Bobby Unser's team. It's not Mario Andretti's team, Sneva's team, Will Power's team, you know. One reason being is there's always been more than one driver, too, period. You know, there's been at the very least two. But you know, he gets it. He gets that recognition without, it's earned. It comes because just the way he operates. You know.
You know, one thing that comes to mind, Rick, that would be interesting to hear about as well, and this follows the theme of drivers, not necessarily the spotlight side, but of the core aspects of this 50-year celebration. It is consistency. Obviously, Team Penske has not competed in 50 consecutive Indy 500s. We had that little split thing that wasn't very pretty, but if you look at the vast majority of Roger's time at the Speedway, his cars have been very competitive. Drivers have been very competitive. What's unique in that is if we move from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, the 2010s, the teens that we are in now, there have been different team managers, general managers, engineers, chief mechanics, and all those drivers. And yet there is a very identifiable through line in terms of success and speed and quality at the 500. That's an area that you've been directly involved in as well since you retired from driving, as someone who has coached up a kid like Will Power, who hated ovals, didn't know him, wasn't his background, wasn't his forte. He's coming back this year as the defending winner of the race. You share some thoughts on, I don't know if it's a team culture thing of consistency and maintaining that high level or how it's done, but you've been there for so much of the ride. There must be something, there must be someone or some mechanisms in place to ensure that name the year, name the driver, and boy, it's almost a flat line in terms of potential.
Well, it's why we're there. It's the whole point, you know, of why we're there, and it's the work ethic. You know, it doesn't matter who it is that comes on the team. Let's say you get somebody come on team that's doesn't really want to put out the effort, not necessarily there for the right reasons. Just kind of wanting the job, well, you know, the guys don't have to say much to them. They'll embarrass them into it. They'll work them under the table. You know, pretty soon you feel like, ooh, you know, I got to start pulling my weight here. And you know, when you watch that work ethic and the dedication from everybody involved, and that stems from the top. You see the work ethic, the dedication, the whatever it takes. It goes right on through the list. And you know, I've always said, if you think you're busy, go follow Roger around for a week. You'll feel like an absolute bum. And it just, you know, that's him. That's just what and that just filters through the team, and it creates the work ethic. And you know, you've got to want to do it, and you've got to want to be involved with that team and want to be a part of it, which is another big part of what Roger does. He makes everybody feel a part of, not working for. They are a part of the team. And that you know, you work harder you'll work harder for yourself. like if you had your own business, you know, You got to make it happen. And if you feel like a part of the team, you feel like you're working for yourself, not for an individual. And he makes everybody feel a part of. The way he instills that, and like I said, it stems from the top. And I'll go back to just a quick story of where I witnessed another one of those aha moments. We were doing a function. Roger, it was after he'd bought Detroit Diesel, and we were in Ohio at one of the big distribution plants. And Roger had gone in and cleaned the place up, the factory, and did his thing to it, everything shining. And then he had a family day, an employee family day, and then we went in and did our dog and pony show, and got up on stage and said hi to everybody and chat a little bit. And then we went over and sit down at a table and to autograph pictures. And Roger was sitting to my left, and I was sitting next to Roger, and I think Sullivan and Al Sr., I believe. Now all the employees and their families were coming up to get the picture signed. And Roger was typically everyone that came to the table. How you doing? How's everything going? Anything we can do for you? Anything you need? Everything okay? And that was kind of the standard question to everybody that came to the table as we're signing. And so we're signing along there, and pretty soon this couple walks up and Roger says the same thing. How you doing? Anything you need? Everything going okay? And this guy's wife starts laughing, and I noticed it caught Roger's attention. When she started laughing, he kind of looks up at her, like what's laughing about? And she said, "Are you kidding?" She said, "I used to have to kick him out of bed every morning to get him up to go to work." She said, "Now he's up and gone before I know it."
I love it.
And that was just one of those, there you go. That's what he instills in people. That he won't ask you to do anything he doesn't do himself. That the work ethic, the attention to detail, the be there, the support. It's just things like that, that he creates in this team that brings everybody along and makes them dig a little deeper, work a little harder. That's how you raise the bar. And everybody is that Penske way of thought, way of thinking. And that's, so when somebody comes in, they see that they're surrounded with it, and you're not forced to. On one hand, you're forced to, but if you're forced to, you probably don't need to be there. It's usually you want to, because what this team has done in the past, and you want to be a part of it. That's why you're there, and you're going to have to dig deep and learn, the way things are done, and and that's just a learning procedure of anything. It takes time. Like when we say seat time, when Will, obviously most of these drivers these days don't need a lot of help when they get here. But Will being have a very little oval experience, and I worked very closely with him right off the bat on the oval stuff. And I knew he had the talent. I mean, I could watch him on a road course and see things he does on a road course that I knew would be just perfect on an oval once he gets the seat time and learns what he needs and gets the confidence and it all comes together, which is just a matter of time. Nothing else, just time. And all the ability was there, the talent was there. It's just a matter of learning how to apply it to an oval or a speedway. One of the first tests we went to on a speedway, he was just automatic, what I call a natural line. There's been a lot of guys that I've had to work with them to get their line more what I feel is right, and Will was just on it. Just immediately, he had that knack, and he uses that lateral load and feel to get the arc of the corner where it's supposed to be, and he just immediately fell right into the, within the range of where he needed to be right off the bat. And this he had a little get together at his house after Indy this year, and I was here in Charlotte at the time, so I went over and we were looking around. I hadn't been to his house yet at that point, so he's showing me around and everything, and I talked to him and talked to him and talked to him. You never know what sticks, what works, what doesn't. You just kind of keep your eyes and ears open. I don't force a lot. I let people do their thing, and if I see something that needs looked at or talked about, then I bring it up.
Sure.
It's usually just kind of I'm an open door, a sounding board, and any questions, don't hesitate. But you're always throwing stuff out, and like I say, you never know what works for them because everybody's different. We all drive different in different ways and different thought processes. But so we're over at his house, and he was showing me around, and he said, God, I love ovals today. He said, I'd rather go to an oval any day than a road course. He said, I just absolutely love them now. I said, I know it. I was always the same way. I mean, I love both of them. But if you gave me a choice, I'd take an oval. To me, there's something about it, And so we're talking like that a little bit. Pretty soon he says, you remember telling me a long time ago about driving with pressure on the wheel, not movement? I said, oh, yeah, I remember that. He said, I finally got there this year.
Wow.
I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I finally got there this year, and it helped so much. But it took a lot of time because you never know what stage anybody's at either. And I never know. To me, everything I did just, as they say, why do you do that? I say, what do you mean, why do I do that? I just do it. That's what the car tells me at once, and I do it. It's no magic. And, but I realized with time how much of that was kind of natural and came to me. And then how much when other people have to learn it, but which I had to do on the slower the course. I had to work at it more. The street circuits are the ones I had to learn how to drive the most. But I about fell over, because I remember telling him that. It was quite a long time ago. And he says, I finally got there this year.
Why don't we close on this, Rick? When I spoke with Chuck Sprague for this series, he mentioned something that I thought was fascinating and so true. And he said, of everything that Roger has brought to the Speedway, the unsung heroes of the Penske organization for so many years was the Penske cars, the actual fabrication, design, creation team for the Penske chassis that were used to such great effect for so long. And thinking about your history, I love the fact that your first race with Roger, or your first season with Roger in 78, was with a Penske PC6, and your last was in a PC21. So you were there for a lot of years, a lot of models, a lot of great stuff coming out of the shop in Poole, England. Obviously, time has gone by. We're no longer in a place where teams or just a variety of manufacturers are bringing their cars and new ideas every year. But why don't you share some thoughts about the different PC cars that the different PC designations that you drove, the people who designed or engineered or manufactured those cars, because specifically in your career, there was not a single year where you drove a spec anything.
Yeah, they were the unsung heroes, and I loved it when we could do our own cars, and let's face it, I'm lazy. I always have been, and that's why I always worked hard on getting the car working, because I knew the better the car worked, the less I'd have to. And when you're doing your own cars, I loved it. And again, a selfish reason. If you find something, the others don't have it. And so if you can get that advantage, you can hang on to it longer, which is one of the great things about having your own cars. A couple of things. First off, real quick, with Penske and his cars, another one of the great things about Roger was because his name on it, his ego didn't get in the way if the car wasn't working.
That's a great point.
And because I don't know, a couple of years there, I had to jump in a March right just before qualifying. And the first year was at 84 the year we won. That was in a March, I think it was. And we got it 3 days before qualifying and went out and set it on the front row. Just showed the depth of the team and the strength of the team, taking a car that other teams had been using for a couple of years at that point, and were up to speed with it. And our guys took it and did their thing to it, set the thing on the front row, and then won the race with it. But it just showed the depth of the guys. But the thing was, Roger and Indy, he lights up for Indy. I mean, he racing is, he's said it time and time again, right? This is my golf game. This is my golf racing. And he wants to be competitive. And the other great thing about him being a driver, for me as a driver, when I came in and said the car's doing this, or this, he'd say he understood because he'd been there. He said, well, you can't drive it like that. We got to fix it. Instead of saying, well, why don't you just stand on the gas a little harder? He understood. And that was a great thing to have an owner like that from a driver's standpoint. But when it came time, we'd persevere. If it didn't look like it was working real well, we'd persevere through the first couple of races and keep trying to make it better, make it work, and make the changes necessary. But if we hadn't hit on it by Indy, and he's constantly watching the numbers, and if he felt those numbers weren't adding up to be where we needed to be for the race, go get a March, go get a Lola. His ego, just because his name was on it, didn't get in the way of competing. But no, the guys and the cars that they built were just incredible. Over the years, I've had people say, what was your favorite car? Well, your favorite's always the last one you won with. And they're always beautiful cars. It could be an ugly car, and if you win with it, it's beautiful.
Prettiest thing ever made.
Yeah, you bet. But so it's always been hard to pick. I mean, Nigel Bennett's first car, was it the 18?
I believe so. Yeah, 17 or 18.
Is that, after we persevered with a 15 and 16, so it was 17 or 18, and struggled, with those cars for a couple of years. And that car was just, off the trailer, right out of the trailer. It was just so fast. But the car just looked right. It just, in the packaging, the Nigel just tidied the thing up so much. He just had an eye for just a very aero clean look that worked too, functional. But all of the cars, the astounding part for those guys in England, for me, was, we'd get a new car and you just going crazy over it. The thing is gorgeous. It's this, it's that. It's, God, how can you do any better than this? And the next year they'd raise it another level. Every year it was an ongoing, you just think, God, how can they make it a cleaner package, a tidier package? How can you make it look any nicer or work any better than this? And the next year it'd be, wow, look at that. They just raised the bar again. And the workmanship that they would do over there, and just the craftsmanship was just, they were artists, in their fabrication. It was just so exciting every year to see a new, we miss that these days of not being able to do that and have that. It was so exciting at the beginning of every year. You just, like a kid at Christmas, you couldn't wait to get the new toy out and see what it was going to be like, And to me, that was always the fun part. You getting the new one, see where it was at, and then how do we make it better? Let's just keep going forward here. And there was always something new to look at and new ways of thinking about it. And the challenge of that was always a big part of the fun. but just the way they did things, we'd go over there at Christmas, around Christmas, and have the Christmas parties for the shop and everything over there and get fitted in the new car. The seats and pedals and steering and everything, where everything was going to be on that, and get our first kind of look at what it was going to be like, before it was finished up and brought back over here. But just a great group of people. It just is, as throughout the whole team has always been. Now that, like I said, we miss that kind of thing these days, but I understand why. And a lot of people are always wanting to back up and, it was better this way or better that way back in the old days, and this, that, and the other. And, what a lot of people don't understand is those days were gone with composite materials. It was over. I've always tried to get that point across, like at Indy, when people complain about not having 60 cars in line to qualify. I said, back in the day when things were metal, sheet metal and aluminum, somebody at home in the garage that was a decent fabricator could think, what, I'm going to try something different here outside the box and put something together. Fabricate something, weld it in aluminum and whatever.
Sure.
Not a lot of people have an autoclave in their garage. And so, once the composite materials, started being used, that ended the day of everybody being able to do one in their garage, which, hurts the numbers, obviously. But I understand why it's the way it is today. I like the spec car. Spec cars shouldn't be as unpleasant a word as it's made out to be, I don't think. I think it's great for the sport as far as competition goes. I think it makes it easier for new teams to get involved to help grow the series. Because we all get the same blocks. Now it's a matter of how we stack the blocks. Who can stack them the best way, to get the performance out of it, to try to get the advantage. And driver, as long as the cars are a challenge to drive, which I think they have to be, so it doesn't equalize the drivers. There's a fine line between, I don't care about, it kind of started out as everything needs to be more equal. I don't mind equal equipment. I've dealt with that with my teammates all my life. They always had what I had. And that always kept me on my toes. And if somebody beat me, when my teammates would beat me, then, okay, I'm leaving something on the table. I've got to figure out what it is and dig a little deeper. He's the guy I've got to beat. If we're 15th and 16th, I better be 15th. If we're first and second, I better be first. That's job security. Although we work together to get there. But at the end of the day, I've got to be on top. And that keeps everybody digging. That's another reason that you have teammates. Another one of the reasons Roger has always had teammates. But, in today's world, as long as I get to use all my tools to drive the car, if you equalize the car in a way, the equipment in a way that equalizes the drivers, it's wrong, in my book. The car has to be a challenge to drive. To put it simple, let's say any driver aid like ABS braking, traction control, anything that's a driver aid, I just lost a tool. And that's why I've always been on less downforce instead of more downforce. I've been arguing that for 30 years, and I think IndyCar is doing a great job now going the right direction. Raising the horsepower, which is what they're taking a look at for down the road, doing away with the downforce like they've done this past year. And they're going in the right direction. And I really applaud IndyCar and the guys, the team they have there. they're now on the job they're doing in that direction, which I think it's showing in the racing and the competition. Even though the cars are, maybe a little more challenging to drive, which is the way they're supposed to be, it shows we've got the talent level in the sport now. The bar has been raised a lot across the board as far as drivers' talent, engineers' talent, teams' talent. And, I watch on these road courses today, and even though we've taken downforce off, made it more of a challenge to drive, there's still 20 cars within a second, which just shows the depth of the field and the teams that are in today, which is what we've been trying to accomplish. Get a depth, or you get more depth in the teams and more talent, and that's how you grow the sport. And I think IndyCar is just doing a tremendous job with that. Through those years, we do miss those years of having the team in England and building our own equipment and that kind of stuff. That was a lot of fun. I've always felt like I was fortunate to be in some of the best era in racing. The cars were so much safer when I came in than they had been not too long before that. Even though they're a lot safer now than they were when I was in it, they're much safer today. Than that's probably one of the biggest gains we've made today than they were when I was driving. But I got to experience a little bit more of the higher horsepower, less downforce era, doing our own design a little more freedom in your expression of changing things and creating aerodynamic works and bits and pieces that you could play with on your own and try to figure out something, a little better mousetrap. Those days were fun, but I understand why they're not there today. And I agree with it.
Let's do this, Rick. Why don't we just close on maybe just something as simple as a summary. Here we are, month of May. Roger obviously wanting to leave the month of May, this 50th anniversary, with an 18th victory. We'll see what the Speedway has in store, what it plans to do with that story. But what comes to mind as we head into practice sessions, qualifying the race and such? What comes to mind about this pretty amazing anniversary that hopefully many will be celebrating, all looking to the man who started this journey for hundreds, if not thousands of people at the Speedway as part of his team back in 1969?
Well, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is that I'm just so fortunate to be able to be here and be a part of it. Like I said, I never dreamed of driving an IndyCar, let alone ever dreamed of driving for Roger. And then to still be involved, this many years into it, I'm just so fortunate to have that opportunity. I've been winding things down a little bit, and the team is allowing me to do that. I missed a couple of races last year and missed a couple this year. Just slowing down a bit, but still involved, and just so fortunate to still be able to do it. I'm overstaying my welcome, but to be a part of this 50th year for him it's going to be an incredible year. I know how excited he gets for this month, and I'm just. It would be such a great deal to be able to, all of us, and I know everybody's going to be pulling hard, to be able to get him another one this year. And I think, we all know how much it would mean to him to do it. And that's just, that's part of what, when you're treated the way you are with this man, you dig a little deeper and you dig a little harder. And let me back up a little bit to a quick story. My first pole at Indy in '79, and qualifying to me at Indy, you talk about the equipment and everything being there. if you're just going to go out and, if you don't have a shot at the front row or the pole, there's not that much pressure. You say, okay, let's just go out and get 4 good laps in, get it in the show and go racing. Qualifying at Indy is the most pressure of anything I've ever done, but it's the most fun of anything I've ever done. And it's one of the things I loved doing more than anything else because of that. But you talk about pressure. This team was so consistent that you were talking about earlier. They gave me the equipment to be in the hunt every year, so I had the pressure every year. There was never a year we showed up that I didn't have that pressure of a possible shot at the front row or the pole. So the pressure was always on. I was so used to it, I didn't realize how much pressure there was until the first year I didn't run. Then I remember, because I didn't think I was all, I didn't feel the pressure all that much until after I didn't have it. And I thought, oh, this is what relaxed is. I had no idea. To me, qualifying at Indy, qualifying anywhere, that was kind of an Indy story, but qualifying anywhere was kind of my payback to the team for the hard work they did. If I could set that thing on the pole, that was kind of a partial payback to the team for the hard work they did to give me. The hours they spent, I'm going to dig deep and hang it out to try to pay them back. And my first pole at Indy in '79, for a couple of reasons, I didn't think about it quite as much then. But, that was the first year Sneva wasn't with us. And he had been the gas man at Indy and had been on the pole, and first one to break 200 with Roger and all that. And now he's driving for another team, and he was sitting on the pole. And everybody had written me off. Only my second year. And I remember listening to the announcer. I'm sitting and waiting in line, waiting to go, and I was the last car to have a shot at the pole. And Foyt had gone out just ahead of me, and I'm listening to the announcer, and he's on it, and he's got the pole so far. First lap, second lap, he's still at record pace, for the pole and da da da. And then he went to missing or something on third lap, and the announcer goes, "Oh no, he's had a problem. He's out. There's no shot. It's Sneva's." And I'm sitting there thinking, "Wait a minute, guys, I haven't gone yet." Although I didn't really know if I had a shot at it or not myself. I was still so new. But I will never, ever forget the smile on Roger's face when I came down pit lane after sitting on the pole there that year. That was one of the biggest smiles I've ever seen on him. And it was twofold. It wasn't expected, for one thing. So it was kind of a surprise to a lot of people. And then secondly, it was for me to bump Sneva off the pole and being the last car with a shot to do it. I haven't seen him that happy in a long time. But that story always comes to mind, just seeing the look on his face when I came in. Just to be a part of this after 50 years is just incredible. And I think it's going to be a fun month. And we're just all going to get there and put our heads down and, see if we can help him with another one.
And that was how Roger Penske changed the Indy 500. You can catch this series and more than 500 episodes at the brand new MarshallPruittPodcast.com site. All brought to you by Cooper Tires, the Justice Brothers, and Bell Racing Helmets.